Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation and Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to the Thanksgiving edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and I hope you and the family have enjoyed a great Thanksgiving dinner, lunch, or whatever. And then, of course, hope you guys will sit down now and over the next hour, relax and enjoy a little sports talk, as we've got a great panel for you on Inside New Orleans Sports. Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket and Chad Sabadie of Fox 8 Sports. Guys, welcome. Thanks so much for coming down tonight.
Happy Thanksgiving, Eric.
Eric,
Happy
thank you for
guys.
having us. Happy Thanksgiving as well.
Thanks, guys. First of all, let's start off. Always like to start off and let the audience know a little bit about what's going on. And we'll start with you, Gus. Gus, tell us a little bit about what's happening at the Ticket.
Just doing the same old thing, 3 to 6 o'clock, called the Sports Hangover, and kind of eat just like you, man, just touching on the topics and everything. And what a great sports year it has been. Obviously, the turnaround with the Saints and Pelicans starting their first year with that new name and everything, and really getting to see a guy like Anthony Davis, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Maybe could the city have gotten lucky again and gotten a guy like a Chris Paul where he could be a franchise player and be one of the best in the NBA. So then, of course, you got the colleges doing what they do, and football, and also and basketball, and still doing Tulane as well.
Right.
So.
Still on the sideline, right?
Yep, still on the sideline and calling women's basketball as well.
That had to be a great time this year to be on the sideline for
Right.
the turnaround for that program.
Yeah, especially when you consider some of the wins that we saw. I mean, Tulane, Chad, goes 5-1 at home this year, and with some of the wins we talking about, the homecoming wins against teams that they hadn't been close on. Tulsa, they hadn't. The average margin of loss or losing was 30 points to Tulsa. So you win those two, and then finally this past weekend, getting a winning season for those seniors, which is the first time in a long, long time, 2002. So it's been nice.
And we'll be discussing it a little bit later for sure. Chad Sabadie of Fox 8 Sports, thanks for coming down, and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what's going on at Fox 8.
Well, New Orleans native, parents born and raised down here, and we basically grew up in Slidell after some time in California, but went to 7th and 8th grade in Slidell. Pope John Paul grad, the Jaguars, trying to do a few things. We won some baseball state championships back in the day. So local guy, went to LSU, and proud to be back in New Orleans now, working with some very talented and great people over at Fox 8. And I just enjoy the variety of what we do, from the Saints to the Pelicans to the colleges and a little bit of high school from time to time. It's a lot of fun. We meet a lot of great people along the way, and it's fun to tell their stories. But ultimately, it's most fun when we're covering winning teams.
Yes.
And when you look at the 9-2 Saints coming up with a big game against the Seahawks, it doesn't get much better than that.
Boy, there's no doubt about it. Let's jump into it. 3 wins in 12 days for the Saints. They take on the Atlanta Falcons on Thursday night. They come off a short week, coming off a very physical game against the San Francisco 49ers. And guys, I got to tell you, really looks good for this team as they go into Seattle. But let's look back for a second and talk a little bit about that Atlanta victory. We'll start with you, Gus. Especially coming off a very physical game with San Francisco, playing against an opponent that they could have laid an egg, but it's a rivalry game. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on how the Saints performed on Thursday night against the Falcons.
I think it's one of those games where you definitely look at it and go, hey, you got the win, you get on the bus, get on the airplane, avoid the eggs if they try to egg you again, and come home. Because as you mentioned, that's a lot of games, guys, in a short amount of time, coming off of a physical performance like that. And let's be honest, it's a game in your division. And we saw in the pregame show, we saw a lot of those segments, Atlanta players flat out called it. It's their Super Bowl this season. It's their reversal of fortune. And they mentioned the fact that they realized when they were undefeated coming to the Superdome last year, Saints players and having a bad season, they wanted to give the Falcons their first loss. So you knew it was going to be tough. Plus, aside from the fact, guys, there's a reason the ratings are so bad on Thursday Night Football. You're seeing it. You saw as many missed tackles as he had all season on the Saints defense. They look lethargic. It almost looked like a training camp practice, Chad, where, they hit that wall and they had to get it. And then in the second half, that energy kind of kicked in. So you look at it from a standpoint of, hey, You got that win. You got in and out of there. Now you can enjoy the fact that you got some time off.
And that's the bonus on the back end. You have the short week. You have the challenges of trying to get what rest you can, get your bodies prepared, take care of business. And if you win, you're fortunate because then you say, hey, we've got the momentum. We are where we want to be, and now we've got the extra time to get ready for the next opponent. And in the Saints' case, it's their toughest opponent of the season, the toughest venue up in Seattle. But I really think the game kind of played the script. The Saints' defense is enjoying a very productive season. They played to their potential. They harassed Matt Ryan. They got the 5 sacks. They forced a key turnover late, that fumble, and held up in the red zone. After that initial touchdown scoring drive early in the game, the Falcons had to settle for multiple field goals. And a missed field goal and then the fumble late really sealed the deal. Drew Brees and company effective, but you have to give a lot of credit to Pierre Thomas.
Yes.
And you guys mentioned the physicality of the short week. He was just willing his team to win. Big first down after the next, but an all-around complimentary victory, and now they gear up for the Hawks.
Yep, no doubt about it. And also, guys, I mean, again, you get a chance to sit Jerry Evans. Tim Lelito comes in and plays really well after going through some tragedy from a personal standpoint. His grandmother dying, of course, him having to deal with that, coming back on a short week, having to get ready for Atlanta. And then, of course, Darren Sproles sits out. You look at everything that went on there, losing Jabari Greer, having Corey White come in. Throughout all of that, and knowing that you're playing an opponent that knows you as well as you know them. You know, look, honestly, coming out with a victory, especially when you talk about 3 wins in 12 days, big win for the Saints.
Yeah, and I think one of the things Chad brought up too, that defense, 9 wins, 20 points or less in all of those 9 wins.
Amazing.
And the thing about it, guys, I find so, I guess, enjoyable to watch, especially from our standpoint in the media, is the way Rob Ryan adjusts. And we saw and we've heard from players in training camp, and Chad, I know you did a ton of packages and features on guys saying, hey, it's fun again on defense. He listens to us. You're looking at it on a periphery, hey, Corey White's getting smoked left and right? But it wasn't over the top. It was in the front, so it almost like Rob Ryan goes, look, let's play you off the receiver and do that. And then it hit a point where, okay, this is too much. And then I noticed on one of those plays, Curtis Lofton playing a little further back and kind of cheating over at the snap of the ball, taking away that slant. So that's the first indication he's adjusting. Then he's moving Corey White to the top of the screen, bottom of the screen, moving him away from receivers. Rod Sweeting comes in. Next thing you know, Atlanta goes away from that. Things calm down and settle, and it goes back to what you're saying. You're seeing that offensively. Sean Payton's realizing, hey, this thing's going. Let's stay with the run game. Let's stay with this. Let's not get silly. Let's not lose the game. To me, that's something I take out of that game Thursday. Adjustments and being smart.
He's got the right game plan, and he's got his players believing in it because they believe in him. And it's funny, the confidence this defense has, just 1 year removed from being the worst statistical group ever in NFL history. And now here they are, a top 5 unit. You know, they're getting pressure. Each position group is living up to its potential. When you think about Akeem Hicks, Cam Jordan up front, Junior Gillette coming off the edge, Curtis Lofton and David Hawthorne have been huge in the middle.
Great in the box.
And then on the back four, you can't say enough about Kenny Vaccaro. And Malcolm Jenkins been in and out with some injuries, but playing well. Jabari, before his big injury, was having a great season. And Keenan Lewis has been very solid as well. So a special group coming together for what hopefully down the stretch will become a very special season, but it doesn't get any easier from here.
You're not kidding. You've got Seattle coming up on Monday night, and then you've got Carolina twice in 3 weeks. You can't throw St. Louis out because they're tough at home. And look, oh, by the way, Tampa Bay has won a few games in a row here.
3 in a row for them.
And they're coming back. So it doesn't look like it's going to be an easy road for the Saints, but man, they're a much better team than what we saw last year all the way around. But let's talk a little bit about the Seattle Seahawks. First of all, we're finding out now they got some problems in the defensive backfield. Brandon Browner, who already has a groin pull, is now facing an 8-game suspension from the NFL for violating the substance abuse policy. That comes on the heels of Walter Thurman now facing a 4-game suspension, again, for the violation of substance abuse policy. So automatically, when you're Drew Brees, you're going to be looking at some backups right now at that Seattle secondary. That Legion of Boom, not exactly what it was with everybody intact. But I guess the first thing that people are going to be looking for is, again, the home field advantage, the weather, something that obviously can affect the Saints. Guys, they had a little bit of a problem in New York, getting plays in, dealing with the noise there. It's nothing like what they're going to see in Seattle. Chad?
Balance will be key in this game. I was in New York at MetLife Stadium for that loss to the Jets, and once Darren Sproles got knocked out of that game with a concussion, They got away from the running game for whatever reason. Pierre wasn't used as much. Mark Ingram may not have been active in that game. They threw it 51 times, I believe, maybe rushed it 13. And in the end, they just couldn't sustain any rhythm. And following the loss, Drew Brees talked about that. He said, yeah, it hurt losing Sproles early. Marcus Colston wasn't playing that day, but we couldn't establish any rhythm, any flow to our offense, and they were playing catch-up a lot of that game, especially down the stretch. So in another very hostile environment, probably the toughest venue they'll play in this entire season until they get up to New York for the Super Bowl, if they're that lucky to get there. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be loud to get those plays in, to get your offense set, to get everybody where they have to be lined up, and to develop that flow that was missing in that loss to the Jets. So I think it's going to be important to get some runs early, and against the Seattle tough fronts, it's going to be a challenge.
I think he brings up some good points. I was there in 2007, and my listeners are going to think I'm a broken record by now because I keep bringing it up. I was the Saints Silent Reporter 2007, and that was the year the Saints started 0-4, and they go in there. Right. I was 2 years on the sidelines for this team, and in the Dome, I might have maybe gotten it to halfway on our IFBs, right? And I had to crank it till 10 to hear what Jim Henderson was throwing it down to me. And that was when they raised that 12th man flag. That crowd gets so into it. And it's an open air stadium. And I'm telling you, it is absolutely loud. But I think you bring up a good point. Don't do too much. Keep it simple. Wait till the game kind of establishes itself, and then you'll be able to make your checks, make your calls. And I think that was part of the problem. We've seen a lot of delay of game penalties. I think Sean Payton needs to have a smart game plan using that run game. You mentioned Darren Sproles. He's so key because, guys, y'all seen against good defenses, this offense can move the football.
Right.
I mean, they can because they have a variety of weapons. You can spread it around. You can use the screen. You can do that. It negates a pass rush that can get to you if you get rid of the ball quickly. So be smart with it. Don't call something where you have to survey the field when it gets loud like that. Go old school. If it's there, it's not. If not, throw it away. An easy check or run, things of that nature. So I think given the extra days, Sean Payton comes up with a smart game plan to help Drew Brees, help that O-line, wait till that game establishes, then let's get creative. At least you hope so, because if you're right, they go in there and start throwing the ball 60 times a day, I'm telling you, you're going to see McCown, if not Griffin. That defense can hurt people.
And what's most exciting, early December, playoff atmosphere. Does it get better than this? We've got 10-1 versus 9-2, basically the top seed in the NFC playoffs on the line, and if the Saints can get the job done, they're in the driver's seat. I mean, they've got it all in front of them. We've mentioned the Panthers and the schedule tough from here on out, but if you can win this game, you're really setting yourself up for a nice playoff run through the Superdome, and we all know what that means.
Big difference.
The good news is the offensive line looks like it's coming together. I mean, even with Tim Lelito coming in last week for Jari Evans, we expect to have Jari Evans back for the Monday night game against Seattle. They have played better. They're gelling. They're opening up holes for the running game. You can see that they're protecting Drew Brees a little bit better than they have, and they're going up against a little different animal here. You could talk about the physicality of the San Francisco 49ers. The Seahawks are physical, but yet they're fast. I mean, they're fast off the edge. They got linebackers that can run. It'll be a different type of challenge for this offensive line.
If only the Saints could play the Cowboys every week, and then they can run for 300 yards on them. But I go back to training camp, and one of the biggest questions was left tackle. Who's going to replace Bushrod? Is it going to be Charles Brown? And indeed it was. And we really haven't had to call him out too often. I mean, he's had a few down moments, but he's been steady, at least at left tackle. The guards have been up and down. Really, Jari hasn't played up to his all-pro consistent level, but he's on the up. He's improving.
And he's been injured.
Right. Ben Grubbs, we'd still like to see a little bit more. If these guys can just maintain their blocks without the holding, eventually it's going to happen. Then these drives can continue to build momentum and not stall out. And right tackle Streif is a veteran leader, very heady out there making plays. But like you said, Eric, I mean, they're getting better protection for Brees. About 3 weeks ago, we were saying Brees is getting knocked around. He's not going to last. But now we're saying, he's got all kind of time to throw.
Well, it goes to what you were saying. You're seeing Ingram had that big burst with the run game, over 200 yards, obviously, against Dallas, but 100 yards again last week. And it goes back to that. And I know this offense, you think of pass first and what they can do. The stats are there. The facts are there. Sean Payton brings it up all the time. They run 100 yards a game collectively, 30 here, 30 there, whatever. The Saints win. It's that simple. It doesn't matter if you get it all in that first quarter, first half. And I think it goes back to what I keep saying about the game plan. Sean Payton, be patient. Some of those runs, as you're bringing up, Chad, they're going to be a loss of 2. They're going to be hit at the line. They're going to smack you and tear somebody's helmet off and the crowd's going to get into it. Stay with it. Be patient, because, again, it gets that disparity. It's just going to get ugly about it. But and use their quickness about them. You know they're aggressive. They're going to be amped up. I've talked to some people from Seattle. Guys, they've been looking at this game for over a month.
Right.
They're circling it. They believe you beat the Saints. You got home field throughout. So use that aggressiveness. Use that energy against them. Screens, Pierre Thomas. Use that run game. Milk that clock, make it shorter, and match that physicality.
One of the things has been going on with the offense, when they play very physical secondaries, maybe a little tough getting off the line. This is a timing offense. They get their timing is a little bit disrupted. Even with the losses that the Seahawks have in their secondary, they are as physical of a secondary as they will see all year long.
Sure.
It'll be up to the wide receivers to be able to get off the jam, be able to get open, and be able to stay within that timing so that Drew can go through his progressions. That'll be a big key to how this offense will go on Monday night. Guys, your thoughts?
You're exactly right. And I'm thinking about Jimmy Graham right now. We all know he's a very physical football player, but he's going to have to be at his physical best. I mean, he's going to have to hold his own and then some and shed some of those mini holds out there in the secondary and get open, because we all know he's Drew's primary receiver. I was looking at some of the numbers earlier. He's been targeted 99 times. Wow. Jimmy Graham. Wow. I mean, he sat out, didn't have a catch in the one game against the Patriots.
Who would have thought a tight end?
He wasn't playing. But this is the modern NFL era that we live in right now. The Gronkowskis, the Jimmy Grahams of the world. Right. So they will look to utilize the Jimmy Graham early and often. But Marcus Colston, Lance Moore really needs to become a more vital part of this offense. Even Robert Meacham, he stepped up when his number's been called. But they're going to have to do some work before they get the ball.
There's no doubt. They're going to have to get the ball out. He's probably going to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker than he wants to, which means these guys are going to have to get off that jam.
It's funny. We're talking a lot about this offense when it goes into going into this game. I think it's going to be huge. We all know Seattle's defense is like that. But it's funny how that reputation precedes it, right? Look at the stats. They're second in the NFL at stopping the pass. The Saints are third. The Saints are one better at stopping the run than Seattle. The Saints' run defense is actually better statistically than Seattle. So it's interesting because we spent all this time going, oh, that defense, man, how are you going to get back? The Saints' defense has done a good job as well. So I think that's the one stat I kind of look at it too. Because to me, Chad, you look at him, it's stopping Marshawn Lynch. I mean, Russell Wilson, look, he likes to move outside the pocket, can maybe extend some plays, can get you a first down or two going. But if you can get it to where they have to score a lot of points to catch up to you, I think that's kind of in your favor. So I'm looking at it as, how will the Saints defense match up with this challenge?
And they have to key on Lynch and they have to stop him. It's a similar game plan to what they had against the Jets. Let's make Geno Smith beat us. We're going to focus on Chris Ivory. We're going to shut him down. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the job done that day. Ivory playing with a lot of passion, and you've got to credit him. I mean, he was running hard, a man on a mission, bounced it outside several times. The Saints have to have better contain on the outside. Curtis Lofton, David Hawthorne have to go sideline to sideline. Paris Harrelson will also be key against Marshawn Lynch in this game.
It's been the biggest problem for the Saints so far on the defensive side of the ball. Again, guys going off tackle, getting on the edge, and getting big yards for them. I agree, but this is a different defense. You got a defense that's younger, that's faster. When you look back to where this defense was last year, and some of the guys that were thought to be, again, starters this year, Will Smith, Jonathan Vilma, others. You look now at what this defense is. You've got young, fast guys that can go sideline to sideline. They'll be able to contain Russell Wilson and to be able to keep him off the edge, even though, again, he has a guy, as you mentioned, will make time with his feet. That gives receivers a little bit more opportunity to be able to get open. But this is not a defense where you got to think now, this defensive line, that, oh, wait a minute, how do we match up? Because they can go sideline to sideline. And, oh, by the way, they're starting to get pretty stout up the middle.
I was just about to get
Akeem
into
Hicks,
that.
John Jenkins.
That was my point.
Come on, Broderick Buckley. These guys are playing pretty good.
No, that was my point. I mean, guys, we're talking about Marshawn Lynch getting off. Well, if he has to constantly avoid penetration, let's say the center gets pushed back or one of the guards gets pushed back, that can affect going off guard or off the side. And here's the other thing that's interesting, too. You talk about Akeem Hicks being able to get any kind of penetration. Doesn't have to make the tackle, doesn't have to make the sack. Just affect the pocket, affect the field of vision. Exactly. Make Marshawn Lynch have to take a step to the left or right, or just be worried about that. And guess what's coming on the end? Roman Harper probably still hasn't slept from that playoff game, right? And he's been back. Now finally he's back. And in this role, the way, again, we go back to Rob Ryan's defense, what he's done, He's not being asked to cover as much. He's a run support guy.
Bring him up.
Yep.
Bring him up. Kenny Vaccaro, I think, can be just as big as Jimmy Graham can be on the offensive end on the defensive side. I never see this guy give up a tackle. You know, very rarely have we seen
Best
this
tackler
here.
on the team,
Without
hands down.
question, right? So he's a guy that maybe you use him as a spy and go, wherever Marshawn goes, when he's on there, you get on the line of scrimmage, run blitz, or be in the middle, kind of play spy. Where he goes, you be the first one to penetrate through the line and go hit him. That's something the Saints haven't had before. Push up the front with Akeem Hicks. Now you got a guy in the secondary that wants to get physical.
Yeah.
He's had concussions because he wants to get physical. Just those little things, I think it's different than them maybe being able to control it, I think, this year.
And it's a trickle effect. I mean, the positive play up front, through the middle, through the back end, and it's that confidence, aggressiveness, and physicality.
Right.
Remember Kenny Vaccaro back in training camp bringing it to the offensive players. Jimmy Graham didn't like it too much at the time, but he's sure loving his defensive teammate right now. But overall, Rob Ryan has these guys playing like they know they're capable of getting the job done, and we've seen the results. And they've done it on a very consistent level. So now it's just a matter of manning up, doing their job, and getting it done. Depth has also been huge. I mean, think about the D-line. Young guys like Glenn Foster, Tyron Walker, Tom Johnson, Kenyatta Dawson, all in there playing a valuable role to spell Cam Jordan and Akeem Hicks at times. And if you can keep Cam Jordan and Akeem Hicks fresh for late in the game, then it's on.
Hey, and in a game like this, all it takes is one play. Look at Atlanta. They're driving down there, right? 17-13, 13 minutes to go in the fourth. Momentum's going. And you mentioned his name. Kenyatta Dawson comes in, makes the strip. So all it takes is one play, and especially if it's a close game like that, it could be an unsung hero that makes the difference.
We've talked about the crowd noise. We know what New England was able to do to the Saints defense in terms of stopping them, bringing in certain packages. We know that again, on the offensive side, Drew Brees likes to be able to check at the line, be able to make changes on the plays, on the fly, depending on what the defense is going to give him. It'll be interesting to see how they're working on their communication skills on both sides of the ball this week, knowing they're going to go up in that very hostile venue.
I think that's huge. Again, you go back to New York, and you were there and felt it and heard it. I'd never have thought of MetLife Stadium as a place that got at all.
Pretty rowdy.
No. And again, it kind of goes to, I think something else that I've been bringing up on our radio show is Sean Payton, it took him a little while, I think, to kind of get back into the groove of things, you know, and a lot of times it goes back to, it's something we discuss, I know you do on your show too, is don't get cute. It goes back to what I was saying with the game plan. Go with something that's quick, that he can give time at the line, get the play in. Sean Payton's mentioned that in that game right after that. He took too long getting the play in, so it's about rhythm. He is just as important as a player making the checks at the line or snapping the ball. Get the play in, make it something that you can do, you can make it understandable. You don't have to get as complicated. It can be literally as, hey, we're going left or we're going right with protection here. And if that's the case, roll them out. I like to see Drew Brees be able to roll out a lot more. On a lot of times the defenses have had success, he's been stationary in the pocket. And Sean Payton says that a lot. Launch points, right? Changing it, moving it. And you can also vary it up with snap counts. Some are long, some are short, things of that nature. All of those little things can add to help give you just a little time.
And the longer the Saints maintain the ball offensively, if they want to score quickly, hey, we're all about it. But if they want to have some long, methodical drives, kind of keep that crowd a little bit, tapered off, then we'll take that as well. But if any one of us sat out of our profession for a year, you'd probably take a few weeks to kind of get back into it. So I think back to that, it's really amazing what this team has accomplished, considering they were without their head coach for an entire season. And he didn't have communication with anybody. I mean, he was learning some of these players, their skills and assets for the first time.
So true.
So they started 5-0, which was a miracle in itself, and here they are 9-2, going into a huge NFC playoff contending showdown. It's pretty miraculous what they've accomplished.
Guys, we say this every week, but it could never be more true than this week. Got to keep the turnovers to a minimum, almost none, and mental errors. I mean, with that crowd noise, with everything that's going to be going on, you got to make sure that you keep the mental errors to a minimum. This is one of those games where the team that turns the ball over, the team that has the mental errors, the penalties, they end up losing.
I don't know why it just popped in my head, but Sean Payton after the Atlanta game said sometimes punting isn't a bad thing. And I think a guy like Thomas Morstead can be really big in this game, play the field position battle. Sometimes, again, you're going up against a defense that, man, one bad side sack or hit, it's a fumble, they get a short field. Again, it goes back to being smart. Sean Payton needs to be smart. You know what? You're 3rd and long, dump it, hand it off, let's punt it. You know you have one of the best punters in the NFL. Pin them deep. You got a good defense. Play the field position. And I think I don't know why when you were just saying that, mental mistakes, because you're going to get some false starts.
Always.
You're going to get
It's
a
gonna
holding.
happen up there.
Right, you're going to get a holding. You know what? If it gets like that, don't get silly, don't get greedy. Drew, don't throw it in a triple coverage for Jimmy Graham. Punt the ball.
And you were saying this earlier, Gus, don't get too cute.
Right.
You know, if it's 4th and 1 and you've got the offensive line man on man, just get it, run it up the middle, use the fullback.
You don't want a
think back to the
6-yard end
Jets.
around.
We don't need
Exactly.
Josh Hill. Hey, Josh, you've been playing pretty well on a 4th and 1, tight end reverse, kind of blowing up the Saints come back there. So keep it simple, you know, go with what works up there and really negate that crowd again, because if things start snowballing in a negative direction, it can get out of hand in a hurry, and we all remember that playoff loss up there a few years ago.
Chad, keys to victory for the Saints.
Well, you mentioned protecting the pigskin, and I like to start off with that every week because one big turnover can really determine a win or a loss. We saw that in the Manning versus Brady latest installment, the muff punt there at the end. Touched the Broncos player, the Patriots got it, line up for the game-winning kick in overtime. So if the Saints can play a clean game, I like their chances. I want them to develop that offensive flow and that balance. Like we said, Breeze can't air it out every other play. You've got to get the running game going as well, and just a consistent push from your defensive line as well. Make Russell Wilson uncomfortable, keep contained, and don't let Lynch get to the outside.
Yeah, along those same lines, I think the first thing offensively I look at, Eric, as not only play smart, I keep going to smart game plan and protect Drew Brees, but I think you got to play Saints football, spread the football around. This team's incredibly difficult to defend offensively if you're at 7, 8, 9, 10 different receivers with one pass catch, right? It may just be to set up different things. If we start seeing where Graham gets targeted 15 times, has 10 catches, and nobody else does, get Colston involved. You got Meacham, Stills has been able to do it. Lance Moore, can be a possession receiver. Ben Watson can be a guy. Spread it around. Have Seattle with some of those cornerbacks you mentioned that aren't starters going, uh-oh, it's them. So be smart on that end. Defensively, to me, it's simple. Stop Marshawn Lynch. Make Russell Wilson have to throw 300 yards against you. I mean, I would just look at it that way. And if he does that, hey, good job, you beat us through the air. I think it can literally be that simple. You got two very good defenses. I think you got two offenses, different styles, but are successful at what they do. This is what it's all about. This is what makes the NFL fun.
I do worry if it comes down to a game-winning kick.
Oh, no.
Well,
Garrett Hartley
I was trying to stay away from that.
has bounced back nicely. But that was in the friendly confines of the Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
Right.
Kicking in that wintry condition up there at Westfield on a Monday night.
Oh.
That's going to be fun to watch.
Bite your tongue, that's for sure. Guys, I'll only add one more thing to what you have said, and that would be you got to run the football. They've got to be able to run the football, at least some semblance of the run. If it's the short passing game that's an extension of that running game, so be it, with Sproles and also Thomas. But I will say this, if they can get a running game going, that's going to make it a heck of a lot easier for Drew Brees.
I'll add something in. I know it won't happen, and you might think I'm nuts and throw me out the studio, but I'd like to see Kyrie Robinson activated and used in this game.
He runs hard, too.
I know, he runs hard. He can be your bowling ball. You know already you're going to get gains of 1 or 2. Make them punishing gains of 1 or 2. I have nothing personal against Mark Ingram, but the gains of 1 or 2 or no gains for him, those big defensive linemen that look like pro wrestlers are just going to throw him down with one arm. Kyrie Robinson, they're going to have to tackle him. Over a couple of quarters, that might help you a little bit. I'd like to see Kyrie Robinson get used, and I don't put it past him. You saw in that game against New England, Travaris Cadet and Robinson were used and scored touchdowns there. So, or was it the Bears game? So I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know why I'm thinking, you know what, maybe Kyrie Robinson might be able to do something in this game.
Well, I would like to see him play, but they seem to be in love with Mark Ingram. We'll see what's going to happen. Guys, hang in there. You're watching the Thanksgiving edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket and Chad Sabadie of Fox 8 Sports join us on the program. We're going to give you a chance to go grab some leftovers as we take a quick break. We come back, we'll talk about the Pelicans. We'll also talk about the LSU Tigers and the Tulane Green Wave. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports on WLAE TV.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation and Natels Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home.
Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state. Blue state. Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live.
our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, Direct TV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Welcome back to the Thanksgiving edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I hope you saved me a turkey leg because I'm getting a little bit hungry. Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket and Chad Sabadie of Fox 8 Sports are our panel tonight, and we shift gears to the New Orleans Pelicans. And just a week or so ago, they were talking about Monty Williams' head. Now where we see this team kind of coming together, you look at where they are right now. I mean, again, guys, to me, I've been saying since the beginning of the season, it's been a work in progress. Chad, why don't you take it first? Your thoughts on the Pelicans?
I think they're off to a decent start. I'll say that. Obviously, you know, close to a 500 record early in the year isn't exactly where you want. But remember, they were without Ryan Anderson, one of their key offensive weapons to start this season. I think the growth of Anthony Davis has been the biggest positive to watch. I mean, this is a young player who's still not even 21 years old, coming into his own in his second full season in the NBA. His body's more mature, more physically stronger. He's added a little bit of weight, but he knows how to approach the game a lot better, a lot more efficiently, and you're seeing the results. I mean, he's averaging a double-double, points, rebounds, and this young man is averaging 4 blocks a game. That's amazing. You know, second in the NBA right now. So I like a lot of their parts, but with so many new faces, Tyreke Evans, Drew Holiday, bringing in some of these other players, you have to have time to make it a cohesive unit. And you'll have some wins, you'll have some tough losses as well, but what we don't want to see is just lack of effort.
Yes.
You don't want to see that. But I think one of the recent wins against it was 76ers, and they beat the Jazz, and then they recently beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. You saw a young team come together on that recent win streak where they were down late in the game, and they rallied around each other, found a way to come back from a double-digit deficit and get the job done.
Chad hits it right on the head, that last point, because it's interesting, all the moves they made, the expectations level rose all of a sudden around here, right? It was just like, hey.
As it should have.
Absolutely. But so because of that, and you get that start, it's fire Monty phone calls all over, man.
Ridiculous,
on Twitter,
isn't it?
everything fire.
Like,
and I sat there and you look at it, and it's exactly what Chad said. You can't bring in a new starting point guard, a new guy off the bench that you expect to give you points in Tyreke Evans.
Well, and a guy that's never played coming off the bench before in Tyreke Evans.
Well, and here's the other thing, too. Let's be honest. He was a little heavy. I mean, the injury, he put on a little weight. He did. He said it himself. He wasn't in basketball shape. And then Ryan Anderson not having him. You've seen the impact. My goodness, 47 points his first 2 games back and everything.
Amazing.
So you got to see how it opens the floor and spaces it. I'll go quickly back in the summer. You saw Anthony Davis in the Summer League take that Summer League team roster when he was getting his work in, prepping for Team USA, closing practice with that Summer League team, being the inspirational guy, being more of a vocal leader. When he didn't have to do that, he could have got his 2 hours work in and left.
Moved on.
He stayed, practiced, talked to him about what to do. Then you saw that, white and blue game, whatever, for Team USA, that exhibition game. He and Kyrie Irving, by far, were the 2 best players on that court. And all of a sudden you start going, uh-oh, this guy can do something. Preseason was doing it. Now you're seeing it. You gave up the stats. He is a franchise player, and I mentioned this at the start of the show. how lucky is New Orleans? Because let's be honest, Chris Paul is going to be a potential Hall of Famer, right? I mean, you're seeing him one of the top at his position, can impact the game, shoot the works. Look at what Anthony Davis is doing. He's impacting the game offensively, defensively. I said it when they drafted him. If he could be anywhere near, he reminds me of a Kevin Garnett guy. I don't think his body, he's not going to have shoulders like David Robinson or something. But
or Tim Duncan.
Exactly.
That big.
Right. And even Duncan.
But he will fill out.
Right. But Duncan has the fundamentals, right? The big fundamental, whatever. But with Garnett, you looked at him. He was a guy, and we kind of forget his days in Minnesota. Back and forth, on the offensive side and outrun people. Anthony Davis is blocking a shot, then leading the fast break and dunking on the other, and that's ridiculous. Anderson hitting the shots. You're seeing Gordon have a very nice year, what he can do. And then Drew Holiday, as you're mentioning, the last recent win streak, taking ownership. That's the one thing. Who is going to do the yelling when the defense is not playing well, offensively needs a shot? It takes time.
It does. Out of Drew Holiday, I'd like to see him get his assist up a little bit more, the ball in his hand a little bit more, but you can see kind of coming together. Here's a question going forward, and I think it's a legitimate question. Does Monty have to tweak his scheme to fit his players now? Again, you've got some guys that are pretty good on the offensive end. We know he's a defensive-minded coach. They've got to play better on defense. Their defensive rotations are still not where they need to be. But does he have to tweak it a little bit now to try to say, okay, I got some guys that get up down the floor. I got some guys that score. Maybe I have to change a little bit.
I think he's going to have to. I mean, it's all about what personnel you have, what resources are available for your use. And at the end of that Cavaliers game, he went with Anderson in there, Evans in there as well, Holiday, Davis. I mean, your main go-to guys. So if you're bringing Evans off the bench early in the game, just make sure you have your pivotal players in there in crunch time and let the guys who are paid the big bucks get the job done. And I think Eric Gordon really is a key to this team. And he's been so up and down with this franchise, being out with the knee injury, playing 9 games in the first season with the Hornets, the shortened season, and then barely playing, less than 30 games last year. If he can maintain his consistent level of play, then maybe with the addition of Holiday and Evans, it takes them to that next level. But still early in the season, we're not seeing that they're a runaway playoff contender. It's a work in progress, like you mentioned, and they're really going to have to work with those schemes and get the players in the right position.
I want to say it was after the 76ers blowout game, he was asked that very question. Do you have to change who you are because you might have an offensive team? And he said he's going to do as much as he can without bending on the principles. And I agree. You still have to be able to play defense.
You got to play defense
at some point in time. But it goes back to what Chad said. It's about energy. In that Cavs game, they looked dead. And then down 12, 4:44 to play, they closed on a 27-3 run. They didn't do anything different on defense. They didn't do anything special and have a 1-4-1 or a boxing one and all. They just hustled. They rebounded, they blocked shots, and they got in the guy's face. So it goes to that. You got scores, play with energy, and you'll be in games.
Guys, expectations for this season. Again, I'm one that believes that they will make the playoffs, unless, they have a rash of injuries. Chad, I'll take you first. I mean, is it too much to expect 8, 7, 6 seed out of this team?
No, I think that's what management's expecting, the owners expecting, and Coach Monty Williams and the players themselves, they're expecting that with the recent additions, the growth of Anthony Davis, now we have a team that's capable of contending for a playoff spot. If they don't, that's a big disappointment, and I really do think management reevaluates Monty Williams. Is he not the right coach for this team, for this job? But hopefully we'll be optimistic and they string together a few wins. It's just about consistency. The energy that you were talking about, Gus, they have to play with that every night, especially on those tough back-to-backs. When you're playing a team like the Spurs and then the Warriors, you really have to showcase that 2 nights in a row.
Yeah, and I think one of the quick snapshots of your question, your point to it, is you don't see Dell Demps go make that move for Josh Childress and Munson if it's not, hey, I'm not happy with the start. We are expecting to win. I absolutely think they could be a 7th or 8th seed. It goes back to consistency and injuries if they can get higher than that. I definitely think they can do that. So, I don't know. We'll see. Again, it all goes to whether or not they can find a leader on the court. Who gets mad when that third quarter is going the wrong way? Can coach find the right rotations? Don't wait till the 4-minute mark to bring back Eric Gordon in that Cavs game. So it's about finding yourselves. Here's the best part about it. We're in mid-November, right? Closing November. Still got December, January. hopefully those things will be worked out by the time the All-Star game's here in New Orleans.
No, I would agree.
And once they develop that chemistry and a winning attitude, I mean, Kobe Bryant is always talking about that killer instinct late in games. Most NBA games come down to the final 2 minutes, the final few possessions, and of course a million timeouts. So we all love that about NBA games. So if they can develop that attitude that we're going to win despite the obstacle, and I think that recent win against the Cavaliers really is one of those foundation cornerstone wins that you can look back on when we get to February, March, and say, look, they've continued this killer instinct attitude that when they face adversity, they're going to bounce back, they're going to make plays other than, woe is us, we were the Hornets, we're not expected to do much. This is the Pelicans. This is the new era. This is the era of expectation, and hopefully they can follow through on that.
The LSU Tigers rebound against Texas A&M, and a lot of people are scratching ahead, the fan base saying, where has this team been all season long? Guys, they contained Johnny Manziel. They contained Mike Evans, one of the best receivers in college football. The biggest difference, obviously, was on the defensive side. Chad, I'll ask you first, was it the extra week that really helped this team prepare the young players for Texas A&M? Is this a situation where a lot of people are kind of jumping on the bandwagon now, much like they did after Florida, and maybe the expectations might be a little bit higher? Has this team kind of turned the corner?
I think they have, and I think Tiger fans, for all the LSU fans out there, they're feeling a bit relieved. Not just that they can win a big game, but that their talent level is still there. I think when they lost to Alabama, and especially the way that second half went, it was such a deflating finish, and there's your quarterback getting beat up and kind of just crawling on the ground to end that one in Tuscaloosa. They were dominated, and a lot of fans and media folk, we said, maybe LSU's talent level just isn't there anymore. Maybe Alabama continue to go up after that national championship win against LSU in New Orleans, and the Tigers dipped down a bit. But clearly the talent is still there. It's just younger and inexperienced talent that it's a shame it happened this late in the year, game 11, but they finally bought into the defensive scheme, and I'm thinking of John Chavis's game plan. He's a sharp man. I mean, he's getting paid a lot of money for a lot of reasons, and unfortunately, in the losses to Georgia, to Ole Miss specifically, and Alabama's a different beast, they really didn't follow through on his game plan. But in this game, recently against Johnny Football, you saw a young Rashard Robinson, young Tre'Davious White make great plays in the secondary, hold their own against one of the premier receivers in the country, not just the SEC. So I think you see this growth. The talent is still there. Brighter days defensively are still ahead.
Got to throw Ricky Jefferson in there as well. He
played
very well.
I think it's two things, guys. One, it kind of goes to what you're saying. First off, it's Alabama. This is the problem with Alabama. I mean, this guy can be winning his third national championship in a couple of months, more than likely, if they win the Iron Bowl. That's like putting me next to him. He's good looking. I'm not. It's like taking your wife to Victoria's Secrets and expecting she's going to look like Giselle. I mean, they're Victoria's Secret models and there's good looking guys. It is what it is. There's Alabama. It's so tough compare because no one's doing what Nick Saban's doing in this age in football. It's not, loving Saban. It is what it is. The guy has established the evil empire. I mean, it's tough to compare them. So it's tough to compare that. I think you have to look at it that way. Secondly,
but there will always be that comparison.
No, I hear you. I get, but right now he's on a silly stretch, and getting players and just the level. The good thing about it is this. I do think, and Chad, you'd agree with me, getting off the bus, being on the field, LSU still does match. I think that's why that win against A&M was so important for Tiger fans, for the program to say, hey, it's Bama, it's LSU every year, SEC West. Because they matched it on the field. Right. You don't make the turnovers, you don't fumble. That's a different game. You can't go ground and pound if you're trailing LSU and they have a couple of those early touchdowns. So you look at it from that standpoint, and secondly, it snaps. You guys mentioned the players. You can't lose 7 guys to the NFL and expect it's the same defense.
And unfortunately, that's the recent trend these days. Just the younger players thinking, I need to get to the NFL. My shelf life is not that long anymore in the NFL. I've got to get there as soon as possible. And LSU will probably be hit again this year, more so on the offensive side of the ball. And really, guys, how much fun has this LSU offense been to watch this year? It hasn't been perfect every game, but the way Mettenberger throws it to Landry and to Beckham, with Jeremy Hill and that quartet of running backs running the football, and what they did against Texas A&M's maligned defense, offense was still pretty impressive. I mean, they dominated that game up front. They dominated time of possession nearly 2-1 and ran for over 300 yards. And those are the type of victories that Les Miles just loves. When his line can just set the tone up front, you can give it to your tailback and just say, hey, hit the hole and keep on going.
But to your point, I think that much like in college basketball, where you see the big programs that they are recruiting for the one and dones, when you're at LSU, you have to recruit knowing that you've probably only going to get 3 years out of your top players. So you have to be in a position that each and every year you're going out and you're reloading. And if you're the Chief, if you're Cam Cameron, you're getting these young guys on the field so they have an opportunity to get experience, so you're not caught 1 year with the cupboard kind of bare. Yeah, you've got the talent, but they've got to learn kind of on the job, which is kind of what we saw the defense this year.
And that's why recently Les Miles and LSU, more so than probably any other program, have played those true freshmen. Hey, enroll early. Come to school in January. You've got a legitimate chance of suiting up. You flash back to 2010, you had Tyrann Mathieu, Thorold Simon, Eric Reed, all playing significant roles early in that season. And then toward the end of the year, they were the future. And then 2 years later, their first round, second round, third round draft picks, and look at how well Reed and Matthews specifically are doing in the NFL. So Les makes it a point to tell these freshmen on the recruiting trail, if you come to Baton Rouge, we're going to get you some early snaps, and I think that's a huge selling point.
And I think that was the other point, too. You mentioned some of those names. You just got ridiculously lucky, and it's a stretch. It's a trend, sort of like I was saying with Alabama. You're talking about not only guys in Matthew and Peterson and some of these. They were difference makers on defense. They were guys that on one play could turn the game, whether it's a punt return, whether it's an interception, pick six, or just make a big play on third. It's not that I don't think LSU's defense didn't have talent. It's who's going to be that guy, and it takes snaps, you know?
Well, and they also had to learn.
Again, you're comparing it to guys, I mean, it just doesn't happen. You got spoiled.
There were so many breakdowns early in the season with the defense itself that maybe it was a little bit complicated for some of these younger guys. We heard over and over again this past week that they trusted the defense, that they played their certain position. They played where they were supposed to be in the scheme. They didn't try to do too much. And again, when you got young players, young players with talent, obviously you've got to be able to play your role and play it to the best of your ability. A lot of those breakdowns is what cost them at Georgia, what cost them at Ole Miss, and honestly may have cost them a possibility at an SEC and a national championship. Guys, it kind of lends me to my next question. Was too much expected of this team going in with all the defections that you saw going to the NFL?
I don't think so, based on the way LSU has been in recent years, and that's been a contender. Year in, year out, consistency. You think back to 2010, ever since then, it's been 2 losses or less. And then you take away last year with 10-2 season, losing to Clemson in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Most programs don't have this level of consistency, except for Alabama, which is a different monster in itself. Les Miles, what he's been able to do is something very special, and it's interesting that he catches so much heat from the fan base, because think back to the early 90s, even late 90s, when Jerry DiNardo was shown the door. This program struggled. It didn't have the top-tier talent. It had a few guys, Kevin Falk here or there, but no consistency until Nick Saban came in, kind of put up the border on Louisiana and said, these are our kids. We're keeping them in state. We're grabbing some of yours as well. And Les Miles has maintained that, and he's had similar success, not what Alabama's doing, but LSU, what they have done is very impressive. But the expectation level, I think, with the offense, I'll say this. It's just the shame that this offense couldn't play with the defense from the past 2 years. Because if that were the case and that complementary style of football, this team would go undefeated.
And, Chad, you brought up an interesting point about consistency. Eric, I don't remember the exact I had it on the show and I forgot, but in the last 9 years with Miles, one time have they lost back-to-back games. That's
just
something
once.
That goes without being said with what Les Miles can do. After a loss, he comes back and wins. And that's a mind-boggling stat when you think about it. 9 seasons, one time have they lost back-to-back games. That is consistency. That means you are a good football team and you are being able to get it, and he can get those guys to play. And that's the one thing about him. You know, I don't know if he's the Mad Hatter anymore. He doesn't exactly gamble nearly as much.
Dialed it down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And I think that's why I think it's going to be fun year in, year out. They can still compete. And I think it's interesting, you brought up something too, and some of these guys and getting snaps and having a Cam Cameron and enrolling early, and it's stuck in my head. Anthony Jennings is a quarterback. You'd love Mettenberger to stick around. Everyone keeps saying, and you know better than I do from being around there for a while, they say Jennings is really, really, really good. Well, he's had not only last spring being on a Cameron, now an entire season on a Cameron. He's going to know that offense. May not have the snaps on the field, but he knows that offense and being comfortable and trusting it.
Well, we could see a different offense with him behind center next year. Okay,
Les Miles is infatuated with the dual threat mobile quarterback. We saw him stick with Jordan Jefferson through the ups and downs of his career, and a lot of ups as well, but some crushing lows in that national championship game. But Les has always liked a dual threat quarterback. You go back to Ryan Perrilloux, and you mentioned that stat. The one time they lost back-to-back games was the end of 2008, and that's when Jordan Jefferson and Jarrett Lee were kind of having their struggles both as freshmen, because your starter that year should have been Ryan Perrilloux, and he was kicked out of the program. So that was a fluke season. But it will be a different offense next year. We're used to seeing Mettenberger take his 3 or 5 step drop, hit Landry over the middle, hit Beckham over the middle, these long crossing routes, 3rd and 17. They don't think anything about it. They say, boom, move the chains.
You've never seen that before.
First
down,
complimented not Les Miles here.
With the running game. But now next year, I think it'll be more ground and pound, hopefully featuring St. Aug's Leonard Fournette there in the backfield if Jeremy Hill goes pro, but then Anthony Jennings running the ball as well.
You mentioned something about the 90s, and I had a kind of a Twitter conversation with one of my listeners over the weekend talking about the expectations of the LSU program. This is not the 90s. You've won national championships. Saban has kind of set the table, as you spoke about, Chad. The expectations for this team now is SEC and national championships. And again, a 9, a 10-win season and a Cotton Bowl championship, that might be okay to pacify the masses because of losing to Georgia, losing to Ole Miss and being out of it, and it looking like it being a terrible season. But really, when you look at this program, the fans now demand championships, and you got to be in the mix with Alabama and Saban all the way down the line, going for an SEC championship, going for a national championship. Are those expectations too high?
Here's my thing. I think it is to an extent because it's not easy. It's incredibly difficult. I mean, let's be honest.
They're going to look and say, well, Alabama's doing it.
Well, I've said it's like bringing it. You know, look, it's what you're seeing right now happening in Tuscaloosa is not the norm. It's not. I'll say this. I do think it's going to help that you do have a playoff. I'd like it to be more than 4 teams.
Yes, sure.
But that is going to allow you to lose a game or two. That is going to allow you to at least still be in the hunt at the end and have people vote you in. You got a committee going. You don't need to be one of 2 spots. You need to be one of 4 spots. That helps, I think, maybe taper that expectations of going, all right, we lost to Georgia, we lost to Ole Miss, but we can still win the division, get to Georgia. Whereas right now, you don't get to the Atlanta game, you got no shot at the national championship. You can maybe not play the the SEC championship game, Chad, and still maybe in the next couple of years get in the semifinals. You just got to get in the semifinals, and then it's all about who's playing well.
The way the system is set up now, and now we approach the end of the BCS
Thankfully.
After its 15-year run. Your schedule is so key, and it has to have a balance of some tough opponents. You have to have a few signature wins, but if you try to do too much, and unfortunately, LSU's schedule year in, year out for the past 5 years has been more difficult than any other. I mean, you think back to 2011, and they had 7 wins over top 25 teams.
Right.
No one else in the country was coming close to that. SEC permanent opponents, that's got a lot to play. LSU facing Florida every year. Now, that's been a problem in the past. These days, LSU would love to play Florida. That program's in disarray, recently losing to Georgia Southern.
Wow. Yeah. Not a passing yard. How does that even happen?
Losing to an FCS school. But when you have, and I'll give Les Miles a lot of credit to open up the year against TCU, North Carolina,
Tough
Oregon
got
when
Wisconsin
they were top 5.
coming at Lambeau.
Next year
at
Reliance Stadium in Houston as well. LSU has sought out the big game, and they've thrived in the big game. But what's been their bugaboo, in a sense, has been the middle-of-the-pack SEC.
Right.
The losses to Ole Miss, the occasional loss to Arkansas that can really derail what's a promising season. Yet still, they're averaging 9 to 10 wins a year, and that just shows you, like you said, the expectations are just so high.
Right. They really are. The Tigers take on Arkansas tomorrow. A lot of Tiger fans figuring at home, senior day, this will be an opportunity for them to get a victory. They're talking about possibly matching up with Baylor in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
How big is this bowl game? Miles has not done well in bowl games recently. How big is this bowl game for the program?
Well, I think it's huge. I think it's a statement that you could say, we got the big job done, the big win against Texas A&M, and now we're maintaining it. We are showing that we haven't dropped off, like we were saying earlier. they are still LSU. They still have the top-tier talent. They can look good doing it too. And that, for the bowl committee, makes that matchup that much more enticing. LSU's defense is coming around. They shut down Johnny Football. Maybe they can do the same against quarterback Petty in that awesome Baylor offense. Right. It's all about matchups and a lot about momentum at the end of the year too. You don't want your program limping into a bowl game. Just think back to last year. They go to Arkansas, they struggle in that game, and then that kind of carried over into the Chick-fil-A Bowl, a bowl game that LSU really didn't want any part of at the time. And in the end, Clemson came all the way back and beat them.
It's interesting to me. You asked a little bit earlier, how do you go and match in Alabama and stuff? And Chad, I've been using this on my radio show. I said it's about setting the tone, and I almost think it's a resetting of the tone at LSU because of expectations, because of what have you, and the fact that they've won so many games. I almost think there's a complacency or there's a lull once you don't. This team, this coach, I think the community, I think Tiger fans, everything's better when you feel like you're the underdog, when you feel like, hey, you got to strive and go play hard. And I said after that Ole Miss game, it's so important to finish strong, I think, because you're still battling for those top recruits. You mentioned one from St. Aug. If you don't finish strong and it looks like you're disinterested, the kid's going to go, they don't want to play for the coach. Now, they go and wax Arkansas. Much better team LSU is. You should do that. You saw what you did to A&M. You go and take on a Baylor team, which every kid in high school is seeing them, that exciting offense go, and they play well. It sets the tone for next season. Not only recruits, but I think the kids on that team that are going to be the guys next year. So I think it's absolutely important to finish strong.
We got about 2 minutes left. I want to get to Tulane. Tulane with obviously a big win against Texas El Paso. They're in a situation now where they've got to beat Rice. And Texas and San Antonio has to get beaten by Louisiana Tech for them to get a chance to get into the CUSA championship. Gus, I'll tell you, you're the sideline guy. Talk a little bit about this Tulane team. They want to go bowling. It looks like the New Orleans Bowl. Right. What do you think?
I definitely think it's New Orleans Bowl unless you can get that win against Rice. Some things happen. Louisiana beats UTSA, and then they can maybe get to that 8-win mark and play in a conference championship game. But I think either way, just finishing strong and having a good outing would be good. Look, it's a winning season. Curtis Johnson's second year. You've been mentioning recruiting and some of those guys. He's got some kids coming, so you finish strong, you play well, and this is something he can go because you're going to the AAC next year. Much better competition, much difficult schedule. It's important for Tulane to finish strong.
It's been fun to watch their turnaround. I mean, 2 wins a year ago to now 7, possibly 8 and more with the bowl game. I like the New Orleans Bowl. I think it's great. Part of me says, hey, give the kids a trip. Let them travel.
Yeah.
You know, they're having a great year.
Give Gus a trip.
Send Gus to Hawaii in the Hawaii Bowl.
Please, if we go to Hawaii.
But congrats to Coach Curtis Johnson. What they've done has been pretty impressive.
Yeah, I know it really has. And you guys have been impressive as well. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Gus Kattengell of 106.1 The Ticket, Chad Sabadie of Fox 8 Sports. And thank you guys for spending your Thanksgiving evening with us. Happy Thanksgiving to both you guys. Thank you for coming down. Also, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, the rebroadcast of this program happens each and every Friday night on here on WLAE TV at 10 o'clock. You can also catch me on the radio weekdays on WGSO 990 AM. That's 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric_Asher. You can also download the podcast at ericasher.com, as well as if you missed any of our previous programs here on Inside New Orleans Sports, you can catch those at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to our group here at WLAE, the production staff, also Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, our producer, William Hill, and to everyone, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your holiday weekend. We'll be right back here on Thursday night for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Good evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation and Natels Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home.